So today it is July 10, 2017, and I posted a video yesterday talking about the ceasefire agreement between President Donald Trump of the United States and President Vladimir Putin of Russia. It was supposed to start Sunday, July 9. And here we are, less than 24 hours later, and Syria and Hezbollah defies the ceasefire. On Detka File, the headline is, New Syrian Hezbollah Offensive Defies Ceasefire. Less than 24 hours after U.S. Russian-sponsored ceasefire went into force in southwest Syria. Please remember that, southwest Syria. That is important. It broke down early Monday, July 10, when a large-scale Syrian army and Hezbollah forces launched a general offensive on Syrian rebel forces in the al-Suwaida province. This region was listed with the Quneitra and Daraa as one of three demilitarized locations to be covered by the troops. Detka File's military sources report that the Syria's Army's 5th Armored Division, led the offensive, which the Syrian Army's General Command designated Operation Big Dawn, to mark it as the opening of a new phase in the war in southern Syria. Our military sources described the attack as focused on the northern rural areas of al-Suwaida province to provide the Syrians and Hezbollah with a pretext for claiming they are not a part of the town and therefore not a part of the ceasefire agreement reached by President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Hamburg last Friday, July 7. In the early hours of their drive forward, Syrian and Hezbollah troops captured 11 villages, small towns including Tal Asfar and Al-Khazar, which lie 33 kilometers from the town of Suwaida, 70 kilometers from Daraa on the Jordanian border, and 78 kilometers east of Quneitra and the Israeli Golan border. They forced the rebels defending them to retreat, most belonging to the Syrian Democrat forces, who were trained and armed by the U.S. and Jordan. According to our sources, Damascus decided to terminate another short-lived ceasefire in the 6-year Syrian war when the Jordanian army and intelligence took advantage of the pause in fighting to transfer large quantities of weapons and military equipment to allied Syrian rebel forces defending Daraa. Under no illusions about the sustainability of the U.S.-Russian ceasefire, Jordan moved faster to bolster its Syrian allies for the next round of fighting. The Assad regime, for its part, felt free to resume combat because the Trump-Putin ceasefire deal had not yet set out demarcation lines as dividers between the opposing armies, leaving that task to U.S. and Russian officers on the ground to take up. Now, what I wanted to do was just go over just a tidbit of Zechariah 9, and where it says, the burden of the word of Jehovah in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be in the rest thereof. In other words, the burden of the word of Jehovah is going to rest on Hadrach and Damascus when the eyes of man, as all the tribes of Israel, shall be toward Jehovah. That's when Jehovah is going to reveal himself to the world. Now, so it is said all over the internet, everywhere, that Hadrach is unknown, is long forgotten, nobody knows what it is. But if we read in verse 2, we begin to realize the real location of the land of Hadrach. Verse 2, Hamath also shall border thereby. So Hadrach is at the border of, Hamath is at the border of Hadrach. Now all you have to do is go to Google Maps, and you will see that Hamath is Hama today in Syria. It is just above Homs. So then it says, Tyre and Zidon, though it be very wise, Tyre did build herself a stronghold, and heaped up silver as gold, and fine as mire in the streets. Behold, Jehovah shall cast her out, and will smite her power in the sea, and she shall be devoured with fire. So what we see here is the land of Hadrach and Damascus and Hamath, or Hama today, Tyre and Zidon, all have one thing in common. They are in the same general area, either in Lebanon or western Syria. And this, folks, especially southwestern Syria, is where the war is located, the Syrian war, from starting with Homs all the way down to Damascus and towards the Israeli border westward. And Jordan shares that border. In other words, it's all western Syria and Lebanon. Now, the power in Lebanon is Hezbollah. It is very clear that Hezbollah and Syria's President Bashar al-Assad are working together. Now, in the same prophecy, Tyre and Zidon are going to be rooted out. There is going to be a war. Who is going to root out Tyre and Zidon? There is nobody fighting against Hezbollah except Israel. Nobody. Nobody, nobody, nobody. So it appears that a war between Israel and Hezbollah is next. So, if it does happen, and I suspect it will, then you can point to Zechariah 9, verses 1, 2, and 3, and 4, as being the answer, or as being the prophecy that points to the destruction of Lebanon. And again, based upon the previous war in Lebanon, the war between Israel and Hezbollah, and the fact that Hezbollah has rearmed itself with over 100,000 missiles, Israel is going to have no choice but to carpet bomb Lebanon. We see this verse 4, behold, Jehovah will cast her out as Tyre and Zidon, and will smite her power in the sea, and she shall be devoured with fire. In all truth, based upon what we see in the world news today, how Hezbollah and Iran are haranguing Israel putting up signs, insulting Israel, telling them that they're going to invade Israel just across the border from the Golan. We know this war is going to happen, and it's imminent. And it happens right near the time of Jehovah's return, where he will instruct, where men will be instructed to be witnesses, to testify against the Gentiles for their sins against the Holy One of Israel, for their sins against Israel, Judah, and Jerusalem. And the testimony will be much like Moses and much like Elijah, or Eliyahu is how you should say it, much like them. So it was not hard to predict the outcome of that ceasefire yesterday. I think it was, I said something like this: anybody who believes that the ceasefire will take hold is a fool, and the ceasefire is just basically a fool's errand. So there you have my take on the ceasefire. When you see Israel go at it with Hezbollah and Lebanon again, I believe that is when we all need to really start preparing ourselves for the big one.